All right, people of faith, let's take another walk. Let's talk on the subject of emotion or emotions. We want to talk about emotions and their actual, the effects of the emotion. And of course, we're stemming from the soul realm. We talk, well, of course, let's break that down. We are a tripart being. We are a spirit. We have a soul, or the soul sits in the midst of the spirit, which is what we would call the heart, per se. And we live in a body, right? The body gives us access to walk among the earth, right? Having a body don't necessarily mean we supposed to be of knowledge of the body. It's just a vehicle to get us around, such as like a spaceship, like a spacesuit to allow you to orbit and go into space, go into the orbit of space, whatever how that goes. But going back to the soul consists of the mind, the will, the emotion, intellect, and imagination. In prior videos, we discussed the intellect and we discussed the imagination. Now, those two are very pivotable, pivotable. I'm tongue tied for whatever reason. They are very vital. They're crucial. They're very significant to the soul. The intellect is briefly go over that before we jump into the emotion. And when we tie into the emotion, we basically going to tie into atmosphere. All right. So the intellect is it's based upon that I guess it's like a if you were to say your motherboard, like of a computer, like where you store all the data on, and you just basically infuse it, right? So the intellect basically sends it to another area of the soul. Let's say, for example, it sends to the imagination area. The imagination area is the what that basically can basically break birth what you see intellectually. If I what is I don't know what's going on today. All right, well I'm just tongue yeah. It's a deal today. So I hopefully you guys can make out what I'm trying to say. It's a deal today. But integral intellectually it's a deal. It's a deal today. So with that being said, the imagination basically paints the picture or puts or the imagination is the widescreen that is like the television. But the it's sort of like the satellite or the internet or whatever the case may be is the intellect. And whatever that's on the satellite or this whatever that's on the internet or whatever, it will stem, it will be able to be shown through the television, right? So the imagination needs something to birth. So if the imagination is left dormant, or if it's in hiding, or if it's conflicted by any, or if it's not able to fully and properly function to its highest capacity, that individual's soul is stunted in growth. It's like a person hiding within himself. You ever heard of someone say they may be such age that would be considered as an adult, you know, ramifications, but yet still a person could say like you act like a child. Well, that person is stunted in growth based upon the imagination is tied up in is in bondage somewhere, is in hiding. So they can't become anything more because they can't see any higher than what they see. So they trapped within this, we would call it a fear bubble. So now let's tie into the emotions. The emotion aspect of it, of course, we're talking about the ability to express, or to act out, or whatever the case may be. The emotion of it all, but of course, emotion can be somewhat confused with the will, the willpower per se. But the emotion is a separate division of the soul, and that is basically stemmed from that. What affects the emotion more so than probably anything is atmosphere. Okay, so like for example, if you have a spirit that's once again we are a spirit, And if that spirit is left for dead, in other words, there's no life in it. uh, how we can break that down to show, what do I mean by not having any life in it, is to say if that soul, if that spirit is far removed from love itself, if that soul, no, if that spirit is far removed from love itself, it is left for dead. What I mean by to be left for dead is to be separated from love. In other words, it has no reason to connect to it. It is left for dead. So that's equivalent to what happened to Adam and Eve in the garden. When the scripture says that they should surely die, they died because the spirit was separated from God. That's what disobedience does. So when the things that we're told not to do, and the things that we're told to do, the things that we're told to do will lead us towards love, will lead us towards to stay up under the umbrella of love, which is where the blessing is, right? So, but the things that we're told not to do, that we do them, it leads us away from that umbrella of love, but it leads us on a pathway to be independent from love. So now this is where the emotion gets affected by the atmosphere. When the spirit is separated from love itself, it is left for dead, and the soul becomes a wanderer. So, in other words, it's there to absorb any information it possibly can from the spiritual realm. But yet and still, the soul was only made to absorb only one type of atmosphere, and that's love itself. We were created in the image of God. We wasn't created on the outskirts of God. We was created in the image of God. So God spoke within himself and birthed us. He breathed into the dust of the ground and we became a living soul. But it's his very breath inside of us. So we're supposed to be connected to him like a child does with their parents. They're supposed to be connected to them to some sort. All right. So, all right, if we talk about the emotion and how the emotion gets considered like be erratic or in the sense of mischievous or different out to a place or venturing out to places where it shouldn't be. That's based upon the atmosphere that's around it. So if that soul is in what we consider a toxic environment, a toxic atmosphere. What is a toxic environment? We consider these or classify these as broken homes or such of the sort, but they actually are environments that is not walking in a unison of harmony. In a unison, which means they are not submitting the members or this environment itself, that whoever's the authority of this environment is not walking up under the submission of love itself. Love is not the most high to them. Something else is. And if something else is something other than love is the most high in in your soul, you are away from love. So you can't help but to be a God in your own eyes, and which means you would know between what's good and evil. You would know what's best for you. You would go by your wisdom of yourself. Now, according to scripture, it says, lean not to thy own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge God, he should direct our path. So how can you lean to God from the direct your path if you're wise in your own eyes? If you're leaning to your own understanding? This is the whole point of far as like of the atmosphere, the effects of the atmosphere. If the atmosphere is not in submission to the authority that love is the most high. Let's say, for example, if I were to go to a bar, is it clear to say when I go to a bar that that atmosphere or the authority of that atmosphere is not in submission to love? Love is not the most high to them. So somebody would say, well, no, but they're peaceful, they're cool, they're not causing any trouble. What they are doing is that's what you call seducing spirits. When you drink a beverage such as anything that's of intoxication, anything that gives you that puts you up under the influence, be up under the influence is being up under another reality, away from the reality that your soul was standing on, right? So that is what when we talk about drinks, and if you notice, they would call them spirits. Those spirits are called seducing spirits. Seducing spirits is an array of different direction. They entertain the soul or they entertain the imagination in ways that you will become to birth that over time. Or they, in other words, seducing spirit plants seeds inside the soul, particularly in the imagination or the intellect area, and it therefore the intellect feeds it to the imagination aspect, and therefore over time it goes down into it manifests into the spirit of the person, or it awakens the dead, or it gives the dead, how can I say it, death itself. In other words, if the spirit is left for dead because it's separated from love itself, then the seducing spirits plants seeds inside the intellect that will feed it into the imagination. The imagination basically can see it now. Now, once the soul can see it in its capacity, it is ready for what? To be made to be a fruition, made to be manifested. It's made to grow and to birth. So that's when the person begin to speak what they see or how they feel. But that comes from the atmosphere. So, but going back to the bar, if the bar is not if the authority of the bar is not upon a submission of love itself, then therefore they are entertaining or they are a gateway to seducing spirits. So that's why drinks are or alcohol or beverages that are that is up under the influence or is considered intoxicating. They are what they would call enticing or they would call seducing spirits. What they're going to seduce and entice you to, they're going to seduce you and entice you to lead you further away from God's love. But after you get, okay, so like for example, when you're up under the influence, it actually strips away the inhibition, right? So you basically can express how you feel, right? You could just, you have, now you become what? A God in your own eyes, which is the sole purpose of it, is to take away the actual, is to remove you from God's parameters that will keep you from hurt, harm, and danger. Well, actually, what it does, it actually leads you and embraces you and infuses you with this direction that you can go where hurt, harm, and danger is, and nothing can hurt you. Because you're going there to have what? The good time. The good time is the barrier that you're surrendering to now. I'm going to have a good time, which is the source of the reason why you're there. So that becomes your protection, the good time. But when someone when someone has the authority to invade that so-called protective shield of a good time by bringing in something of a more of a, we call it a principality, we call it a stronghold, we call it a power of authority. We call it what was that? Spiritual wickedness in the high places, or something of the sort. And that if they're able to infiltrate with that, with them, if that spirit is able to infiltrate, if you notice, all of a sudden, the atmosphere changes. It went from being up under a seducing spirit, in other words, being up under the illusion that you're having a good time, to all of a sudden it drops like that. However, if love was the centerpiece, it doesn't matter what outside force comes in, it will have to bow down to love. So this is the reason why emotions are affected or will be affected by the atmosphere. If the emotion is in the atmosphere where there's love base, that spirit becomes alive. That individual will become alive. And not just alive just in terms of just being able to walk up and down, but no, they will become invincible. In other words, the things that are inside of them that is considered broken, or they are void of, or they are deprived of, or they're incomplete of, it can be a variation of different reasons. And basically, we're talking about the effects of atmospheres. So like you as a child that grew up in a toxic environment where you were picked on, that you was the person that was teased, or you was a person that was bullied, or you was a person that was abandoned, you was a person that was alienated, whatever the case may be, whatever the situation that you're not made whole in, love itself wants to come inside, want to enter into the spirit and bring that spirit to life, where that life itself will go to all those areas of the soul, all the areas where the soul have witnessed the pain or the abandonment or the forsaken or being forsaken or being without. It wants to go in those areas and revive it. We would call this restoration. And to a larger extent, if we're able to walk inside that love, to continue to walk the beat of that love, we would call this the resurrection. That's what love, that's what the tree of life is. It's the resurrection. This is what Jesus is. He is the love package, the resurrection. If you find a person that is dead, they are without life, right? Or they are without love. That means God Himself is separated from them, or in other words, they are separated from Him in some degree, or some sort, some way. So we're talking about the emotions. Now we're talking about the emotion could be the how you basically stemming. People notice their emotion in most cases when they are broken. They don't look at emotions of joy or emotions of peace or emotions of kindness or emotions of patience or emotions of faith. They don't look at that. They look at emotions of pain and sorrow, being without, being forgotten. They hold on to those, and then the emotion grabs a hold to that seed of those seeds, and they produce, in other words, they birth out of them how they feel. So what love itself wants to do, let's backtrack. What love would like to do ultimately is go to the soul and revive the whole soul. But first, the spirit has to be reconnected to it. In other words, the umbilical cord has to be connected back to that spirit. So love itself can infuse or transfer love to that spirit so it can revive it back from the dead. The dead is actually to be uh, basically, it's like when you've given up to some degree and you lost hope, right? You become hopeless or whatnot, and you just going, but you're the walking dead. You're just going by we would call the emotions. We go by, you're basically going by the um, you're going by the chain and whip. In other words, you really don't have control of you per se. You're going by the system. The system tells you to get up and do something. You do it, but there's no love in it. There is no real reason for you to willingly desire with a cheerfulness or a joy or a peace or a kindness to go ahead and or to be patient about obtaining this task. You really don't really want to be there. You're just doing it because you're going with the flow. What is the flow? The flow is of the emotion that's tied into something that is not where it's love based, is tied to emotion where it's fear based. And in those cases, normally we don't want to go, but we don't want to disappoint the people that we don't want to go. If we knew love was there, we would be front in line to be there, right? Because it will have what we would need. It will have what's needed for us to be alive again, to be raised from the dead, to be resurrected. But since it doesn't, it actually gives the opportunity to produce an atmosphere that will take something away from us. That's why we're grudging or we're not really that ecstatic about going to this environment. So if we can get out of it, we will. But due to fear of that we gave a person a promise, we don't want to break that promise of sorts. And then sometimes it may not be the atmosphere that's in that environment that we're going to. It could be the reverse effect, the atmosphere of evil or dead, or a dead atmosphere could be actually inside of us, and we don't want to go to an environment that actually is the opposite of what's inside of us, that actually has love there, and we don't want to go there because we know if we go there, well, what's inside of us knows, the death that's inside of us knows, if we go there, we will be set free, we'll be liberated from that penalty or from the constraints, or we will no longer be dead anymore. We'll be raised up, we'll be alive again. And when you're alive again, you have love to give, right? But when you're dead, you're basically you're you're the walking dead, but you're like a roadkill per se. People just come around and kick you around, and they use you for all the nutrients they can get out of you. You know, they get all the nutrients is basically anything that they can, any source of goods that they can get from the soul. If anything they can get from the mind, the will, the emotion, intellect, and imagination. If there's any love in any of those components, if you're the walking dead, if you notice the scavengers or the vultures or the spiritual vampires, they are coming for you to get that from you, to do an extract of your goods. In other words, the remaining source of your love, they're trying to get that out of you so you can become the walking dead. If you're the walking dead, you become a vessel for the Antichrist. It's just inevitable because when you are away from love, when love is depleted from you, there is nothing left. Where are you going to go to? You're not going to run to the shelter where love is. For one, is what's inside of you is not going to allow you to do it. It's going to convince you in a way of by the seducing spirits that would have entered, and they will persuade you to go a different direction. And number two, it's not too many places where you can go where there's an atmosphere that they are surrendering to the authority of love, right? So the emotion needs to be restored by the spirit of that individual needs to be reconnected to love itself. So like for example, in this day and time, there's not too many places where we can go where we can see love itself, where we can actually be in an atmosphere of love, where it heals the brokenhearted, where the area where you're void at, where the area of where your emotions are hit, where hurt has come in and robbed your emotion of actually experiencing joy or actually experiencing peace or actually experiencing patience and kindness and gentleness and hope and faith, all the good stuff of love, where all those areas where they're deprived at, love itself wants to come in to rejuvenate that, right? So we need to find that outlet. We need to find that play, the atmosphere. So where's the atmosphere at? You got 66 books. I think it's how I go. 66 books. Is that? I believe 66 books in the Bible. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are sources. You could, from Genesis all the way, it's a love story. It talks about how those who have such as this case, their soul is away from God. We can start that with Adam and Eve in the garden. Their soul, their spirit is away from God, or their spirit is away from God, so their heart is away from God. So which would be their soul, their spirit is left for dead, and their soul is broken. Is broken, or you can say their soul is broken, but their spirit is separated from God. So which way to go, they're trying to get their way back home, but they're lost because they have a knowledge that's telling them that they never knew God. They have an information that tells them that they never knew Him. That's what seducing spirits does. So if a person is, so like for going back to the illustration going to the bar, if the person's at the bar, they want to forget what they're currently seeing in their life, or what's the reality of their life. They want to forget that, so they want to go and have a good time. So they want something to cascade them away from what they're dealing with, right? So that's where they indulge into beverages they are full of realities of themselves. In other words, but they're not full of realities that's of paradise or of liberation or of tranquility or of peace and joy. They are the opposite. They are hurt, harm, and endangerment. Once you drink of it, you are part of the influence of that reality. That's why they call them spirits. They are seducing spirits. What they would do, they would go, those spirits or those thoughts that you just poured inside of you, they are thoughts, they are spirits, and they're going to go inside of the intellect. They're going to go inside of there, and then they're going to transfer that, is going to break down that information to be wisdom, and is going to compute it over to the imagination perspective. And now the imagination is going to allow it to harvest inside of the soul. And the soul is therefore going to compute in all areas of the soul, the mind, will, emotion, intellect, and imagination. And once it's covered in all those areas, it's ready for what? Birthing. This is when the individual will birth or speak how they feel. When we talk, words wasn't made for communication. They was made for declaration. It was made for birthing, per se, right? So whatever that you say, so shall you reap, right? Whatever you sow, so shall you reap. So whatever that you speak is going to come to pass. So if a person were to say, like, I'm sick, and it's like, they're not just saying it to be saying it, they're saying it with actual conviction of believing, oh, well, I got these symptoms. Oh, I'm about to be sick. So they don't know that they're speaking a deaf language, because they're speaking out of the emotion of hurt, right? The emotion the emotion aspect of their soul is not receiving anything from love. It's receiving something from fear. Why? Because what they saw in advertisement or kind of corrupt communications and so forth, they saw that sickness can hurt you. In other words, there's your atmosphere of hurt, harm, and endangerment. That's not an atmosphere, or the authority of that advertisement is not embracing love. If you notice that when they do an advertisement about any sickness and disease, is not up under, okay, it's one thing to say like, okay, cancer does this. But do they also say semicolon, say that, but love is greater? They never say that. Why? Because they leave you like a cliffhanger there to say there's no other alternative. That's what death is. Death is no alternative. You are separated from life itself. There's no other, you are at the end of end. That's why it's death. That's why people fear it. But when you have life, it doesn't end. You continue to expand, you continue to grow. This is why the believers in Christ don't fear death. The only reason why a believer in Christ that fears death, because they still have a hold on death inside of them, and as they continue to walk by faith, they're facing fear, but they're walking towards love, and love is shedding abroad across their soul by removing the grip that they had on death, and death is losing its way, and so now their mind, will, emotion, intellect, and imagination is becoming what? Connected to the love connection, which is the Heavenly Father, and now the Father, which is that love connection, is the umbilical cord. Now the Father can infuse the food from heaven, which will be the nourishment of joy, love, peace, happiness, faith, patience, meekness, and now it's infusing to us, and we're growing to the image of God again. Once we was left for dead, but now since we're connected to his umbilical cord, he's transferring the nourishment of the kingdom of heaven inside of us, and now we become something more. We become born again. We become a new creation. Now we become, instead of a dispensary of bringing forth fear based upon the brokenness that's inside of us, we become a dispensary that's operating nothing but good based upon the new atmosphere. What is the new atmosphere? Our soul now is surrendering, is up under the authority of love itself. Love becomes our most high. Why? Because we become a witness of love. How can you say love loves you if you never witnessed love of yourself? We're not talking about phileo love, like brotherly or whatever, on a level of mankind type of love, where there is the possibility for it could be conditional. We're talking about agape love, where there is no room for it to be broken or to be missing. And there's no when agape, or when God, which is God kinds of love, when that infuses inside of you, there is no area it's not trying to cover. It's going inside the soul. It's going to revive the spirit, and once the spirit is alive, when you get like that joy, you like that. You ever seen a person cut a step in church, and it's for real, and it's not like that playing around and you trying to get seen. No, it's like if nobody was there, they're cutting it, or you see the tears of joy come down their eyes, or you just see they ecstatic with kindness, and that because their spirit is raised from the dead. Now that spirit wants to infuse all, it wants to transfer all that life up to the soul, which is the heartbeat of man. They want to transfer that to the heartbeat of man, which is the mind, will, emotion, intellect, and imagination. So it can do what? Become a projection, or it can birth the love of God, which is the life, the resurrection life. So wherever they go, they are basically turning a situation from worse to being as greater, or being the greatest. So in other words, it will become on a mission to seek out those who are brokenhearted, those who are without, those who are dead. But such a case such as myself, I couldn't get to this capacity because I didn't know that I had a grip on fear. And by me having a grip on fear, it was leading to me to separate from love, because love will be like faith will require us to keep walking, but to walk with faith, it will require me to be humble to the direction of faith, where faith is leading me. And then where faith is leading me is toward the direction of love. So love can have what? Love can perfect itself in my soul. Perfect love casts out fear. So if I'm not in in oneness with humility and faith, right? I will be ultimately become hopeless, but ultimately I'm not walking towards love. And that means God's perfect love is not inside, it's not allowed to cast out the torment. The torment is the seducing spirits that's connected through fear itself. Fear will lead you to places where you don't want to be. Always. Always. And if you ever see like when there's something is uh when there's a situation or there's an altercation, it's based upon it's an inside deal. It's an eruption from the inside, like a storm brewed from the inside out. So if somebody were to say, that's comparative to saying this, if somebody were to ask, well, then how come God just don't get rid of Satan? Satan's going to implode. We don't have to worry about Satan. Only thing every individual should be, their direction focus should be on is, are they going to surrender to love being their authority? Love itself being the most high. If they could surrender to love being the most high, once again, we're not talking about a phileo love. We're not talking about a love that can be conditional, a love that can be temporal. We're talking about agape love that never has an end. But every time that it enters inside you, every time you're connected to it, every time you involve into the atmosphere of it, it raises you from the dead by it solving every problem that you have inside of your soul. Every problem that we have inside of our soul is tormentable, or they are problems of torment. What love itself wants to do, because love itself is like the exterminator to fear itself. Fear don't want no parts of love. Fear does not want no parts of love. That's why it does its very best to convince a person through manipulation, through persuasion, through seducing, through temptation, to get that individual to believe, lean into their own understanding is better than surrender to love itself. Because the further you walk away from love, the more you are in the abyss of being dead, which means that you have an end. There's no purpose for you without love. There is no purpose. You are just there. You roadkill. That's why anybody can do whatever they want, because you become now a substance where the I want to say unclean or wicked spirits can come and feed off of you. Feed off of you. You're left. That's why everybody can come and give you their garbage. They can tell you corrupt communication. They can tell you what's going on in the world, but they're not telling you anything that's love based. They tell you something that may be disguised as love based, but it actually is. There are seducing spirits. They are there to corrupt you with the infusion of a deceptional conception. That deception will become your reality. In other words, they don't come with you about what's good. They always come to you like, so and so died. Well, this will happen to this. If this person was doing this, then we will have this. It is never of joy. It's never of love. It's never of peace. It's never of kindness. It's never of patience. But why? Because therefore it's on assignment to extract you away, ultimately distract you, but distract you, but ultimately extract you from love itself. It's there to take all the love out of you. So what can come inside of you? The Antichrist spirit, which is the total opposite of love, death. And if you have death inside of you, there's only one end to you. That is the end. How can you produce anything of good? How can you produce anything of the fruit of the spirit when you're left for dead? You can't. So Jesus is walking around the earth now by his spirit, the fruit of the spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, hope, faith, meekness. And that's in Galatians, the 5th chapter, the fruit of the spirit. And he's infusing that by his love. If anybody that said that they love God but hate their neighbor, they are a liar and the truth is not in them. So love starts where? It starts first with the Father infusing, showing you that he loves you. How can God show you that he loves you when you have never known God's love? All you know is your atmosphere. Yeah, all you know is chaos. All you know is confusion. All you know is confliction, altercations. All you know is what we call just trouble on top of trouble. Well, you have the perfect position to ask Jesus. You could say, start with this. If you haven't, I want to say I'm going to assume that you've heard about the death, burial, and resurrection. If you haven't, let's briefly go over the death, burial, and resurrection. The death, Jesus went on the cross because he was a sacrifice. He you, God the Father gave us a son. Well, how about this? God the Father gave us a love package. Once again, we were without Him when Adam died. No, when Adam disobeyed God, he died to God. He was separated from God. Right. So God has been doing everything in His power to get us back. So the only way He can get us back is by the sin itself being atoned. Otherwise, death itself has the rights of rulership over us. So if we disobey God anyway, death takes us out. Not God, death takes us out. Because we are not up under God's ordinances. We're not up under God's command or His umbrella. We're up under a different umbrella. That was the whole point of what Satan did, or the serpent did with Eve in the garden, by seducing her, by luring her in a question. And now she got into that question. That question led her away from to be a wanderer. Now she walked away from God in the spirit realm to the point where she saw that the fruit was considered to be wise, to make one wise, and that it would become knowledgeable to her. So she ate of it. And when she ate of it, she passed it over to Adam. Never mind who gave it what to what, but that's the process of it. So now they are separated from God. They are what God said they will become. They are dead. They are separated from Him. In knowing so, when the voice of God came down to talk with them, they ran and hid from God because they saw that they was naked. In other words, there was a way they had no recollection who God was. They were separated from Him. So God is doing His very best to get us to see Him past what we see. What we see is a lower state of nature. It's a nature that we never was supposed to encounter. It's that nature to know that you're naked. It's the nature that know that you have a pock mark on your face. It's the nature that knows that you're losing your hair. It's a nature that you're not as tall as so and so. It's the nature of comparison. Comparison creates competition, and competition creates what? Division, because there's no harmony in either one. The only way you can be in harmony is that whoever is evil the most can actually override the next opponent, so forth. So there's no love, which therefore is there to separate us ultimately away from love itself. So Adam and Eve is in the garden, and they disobeyed God, so they were separated from God. They were separated from God. So God loved His creation, so He didn't give up on them. If so, death itself would have consumed mankind. Now, let's say, like, for example, when Noah built the ark, it was there to bring those who was willing to separate from what they physically saw, and willing to listen to what God is saying. If God was saying it's going to rain or it's going to flood, whatever else, come get on the ark. They couldn't get past that because they never known rain before. They couldn't get past what they saw. What they saw is that their imagination couldn't envision. In other words, it didn't have a connection to God where God can show them in a vision what rain looks like or what is to come. They couldn't see past what they see. They were stuck behind the flesh wall, or let's say the wisdom that will make them wise in their own eyes. So they were stuck behind that. So they could say, I'm naked. Wow. So they are. But God is like, who told you that? So when Noah came with the ark and getting everybody to load this ark, says a flood coming, and it's doing over. I don't want to know. I mean, I don't want to know. I actually don't know the extent of the length of time that he was doing it, but he was doing it for a long, long time building this ark. And by the time that it was done, he was saying, "Board, everybody come aboard." But everybody by this time they had went by what they were seeing for so long, no rain, no nothing. So disbelief came and came and came to the point where there is no connection to God. They can't even believe that there is a God. So now it's time to abort. Only ones to get on getting on this boat was his children and their wives, and of course his wife. They were the only ones getting on the boat, so those are the ones that's willing to follow Noah. And so now when the flood comes, they're banging on the door, let me in, but they can't get in now because you are full of the opposition. So now the how the story goes, the flood goes and therefore and wipes out all mankind except for Noah and his. So now Noah is going to reproduce the world up out of the flesh. In other words, giving man the free will to walk right before God by themselves. All they have to do is walk in obedience, right? Going to give man an opportunity to redeem themselves, so to speak. That redemption comes through the obedience of God. He didn't. If you God wanted to wipe off mankind itself, Noah and everybody wouldn't be there. He wouldn't gave Noah the vision. He wouldn't gave Noah the assignment. He wouldn't gave Noah the opportunity to redeem mankind in that regard. So now we see that God still have a love for mankind, and from Noah on down, we have the different children, tribes, and so forth, and mankind exists, right? So it's always going to be two types of, we call it a species of mankind. It's going to be those that surrender to the law of love and those that don't. It doesn't, that decision that goes past religion, goes past customs, goes past reputation, goes past traditions, goes past race or ethnicity. It goes past all the lines that will consider keep you entrapped. Is either you surrender to love itself, the laws of love, or like love is the number one most high in your life. That, in other words, surrender to the law of love is like you look to do everything right, not to do everything right in terms of dotting your I's and crossing your T's, but even if it costs you what you want, even if it costs you being a god in your own eyes, even if it costs you being praised or exalted, you just love to do the right thing. So, like for example, if you was in a line in a convenience store, and the person ahead of you reached in their pocket and unknowingly they dropped some money out of their pocket, you got two options. I guess you could say possibly three. You can say you could pick up the money, put it in your pocket for one, or second option, you could pick up the money and tell the person they dropped something, or not even pick it up, but you could tell the person they dropped something, or three, you could ignore it altogether, right? But let's break it down just to two options. Two options: either picking it in your pocket, or telling the individual ahead of you that they dropped something. That will show where your allegiance is with love. That right there. And those are examples like that in our personal lives. Everyone goes through the examples like that. Maybe not to the exact same example, line for line, but everyone is dealing with everyone on this earth at this particular time is dealing with where they are with love. Because God is he's being Noah again. He's allowing he allowed Jesus to be Noah again. And anybody that's going to surrender to love is going to do what's right. That money is not yours. You know it's not yours, because if it was yours, it would be in your pocket. Now, here comes seducing deception spirit kicks in, and it says like, well, that could be your blessing. How could that be a blessing? You saw that person drop it. Now, it's a blessing to you if that person drops it and they give it to you. After you tell them, that they dropped it, and they say, well, no, you can have it. Here, that's a blessing, right? But they can only be permitted to give it to you if you're not in fear. There's a reason why that person will take that money and there's a reason why that person won't tell that person that they dropped it and take that money and put it in their pocket, or ignore the situation altogether. Fear itself. They don't want to be involved with it. They don't want to have to be in the decision to make the right or wrong decision. So therefore, they don't want a part of it altogether, right? Or you get the person that picks it up, put it in their pocket because they are afraid that this is an opportunity that they can't afford to miss. This is that information that feeds into the emotion, right? This is that seducing spirit that feeds into the emotion. Predominantly, you get this going to search places that is love deprived, where the authority of the atmosphere is not embracing love, or not surrendering to love, not submitting, not in obedience to love. And they want no parts of it. These are establishments that if you were to look at it with love in your eyes, or love as your lenses, you will see this place has death written all over it. That's why only the walking dead can go in there. Only the walking dead can go in there. Because it needs to be fed. They are the walking dead, so they're miserable. So they need to be fed misery. This is a place. It's not like a place where it's like the bartender is not issuing out love. He issuing out something to seduce you away from love. But the seduction is the supplement of actually your spirit coming alive and replace of your flesh coming to life. Now all of a sudden you have these, you're stripped away from your inhibitions, and now you could just, uh, you just can just be. We call it being free. And this is what the Bible talks about with Adam and Eve. When they took the fruit, their eyes became open and they was made themselves to be wise. So therefore, they came open to this. When their eyes are open, they open to one language that they can do it without God. This is what we call independence. But the independence of that is death itself. How far can you get without the one who knows everything? Not knowing everything to what you see. So that's why when we go by what we see, 5 physical senses, those are our instincts and so forth, how we basically can determine right from wrong, right? When we only can go by what we physically see, there is something behind that. Being involved by what we being behind the wall of what we physically see restricts us from restricts us from seeing what's behind that wall. So that's why we can go to a place that consider a place that or atmosphere that's supposed to make us feel good. That's why we go to, say for example, the Bible talks about laughter brings joy to the heart, or laughter is like medicine to the heart, right? So, but there's 2 types of laughter. There's a laughter of love, and then there's a laughter of fear, right? The laughter of fear, or laughter of death, let's say that way. There's the laughter of life, there's a laughter of death. All right, the laughter of death is what we're most familiar with. These were the jokes become at the expense to compare, to compete, to separate, to divide. This is where we talk about something, or we make fun of something that's different. The reason why we laugh because we got death inside of us. If we had life inside of us, we wouldn't laugh at that, because we would see we would see the roots of those jokes, that it doesn't bring forth harmony. But how the joke teller tells it is like, well, you know what I'm trying to say. We just having a good time. Why you gotta be so deep and so serious? Well, my life is at stake. What I allow you to pour inside of me, I'm going to produce. Then that's where you get a person that has a grip on fear. They would defend, well, it's not that deep. I'm here to have a good time. Okay. The only thing about having that good time, that feeling of a good time falls off. So you got to go back to that well to get some more of that feeling good. And once you go back there, that well is empty, because now you're going to have to pay the toll to withdraw from that feeling good. That's why a person goes from having this small type of drink to this larger type of drink to this larger type of drink. And that's why it increase. But you never go back to the point where you first did it. Because when you first did it was the entry gate of the seducing spirit. That's why the atmosphere was an entertainment atmosphere. It was giving you the opportunity to allow it to enter inside of you. And once you're in that atmosphere, you don't drink, you don't have nothing nothing in connection with the atmosphere itself, but you're there. Once you're there, you can be entertained. What I mean by entertained, there's an entry door to your soul. So now all it takes is the right seducing spirit to come inside. Once that seducing spirit is planted inside your soul, there's your emotions. You're gone. Now you're going to strip away from all your inhibitions, and now you're just going to say what you wanted to say or say what you feel. And now you're going to do how you become a God in your own eyes. And now what this God of your own eyes is going to make you wise. It's going to make you wise to the degree that you don't need God anymore, because you become a God. Knowing good and evil, or knowing what's best for you, you are a God. So how can you be connected to love? So you're going to have to play by the rules. Either you submit to love or you're not in submission to love. If you're not submitting to love, you are submitting to death itself. So you're going to have to play by the rules of death. As soon as everything you get, you're going to get it by dishonesty. You're going to get it by some way of not honoring love. You're going to get it in a way that you come out on top. Even there's no line. You can mistreat your family. If you can mistreat your family, if you can mistreat yourself, you're going to mistreat your family. If you're going to, in other words, if you can lie to yourself that this is I can't see myself without this, whatever. So I got to go ahead and do this, or it ain't gonna hurt me, whatever. If you can lie to yourself, or if you can allow a lie to you, then you're gonna lie to your family. If you're gonna lie to your family, you're gonna lie to your neighbors. If you're gonna lie to your neighbors, you're gonna lie. That's your neighborhood. That's your community. That's your city. That's your state. That's your country. That's whatever. It grows and grows and grows and grows. So this is how we get those principalities. This authority figure where death itself, or we say a impoverished neighborhood or a impoverished city or a impoverished state, where it just can't seem to get past this dome bubble, because of the fact that it's a seducing spirit that grew, and it spread throughout the citizens of that region. So all it takes, once again, God sent us a love package in the Son. Going back to this, the death, burial, and the resurrection, the Jesus, inside Jesus was the Spirit of God, which is the love package. If anybody's going to say anything else about Jesus, I don't know about all that. I'm drawing a line with this. Inside of Jesus was the love package. It goes past the things that it goes past the sight of physicality, or to the matter of what we can physically hold in our hands. It goes past that. It's spiritual related. Why? Because we're spiritual related. But if you're behind the wall of physicality, you're behind the wall of not knowing everything. But you would think that you know everything inside of the parameters of this physicality dome. So that's what will make you a liar. Because you don't know all the truth. So you would speak on things halfway, but it would be 100% to you that you're giving it out. You'd be so assured that it's 100%, but it's only half of the truth. That's why you're stuck with being a fact. It's stuck with being just a description of something that you could withhold, you physically can see, and you bank off of that. You got nothing else to go with. So Jesus is this love package, and he goes past the barrier of being physical. In other words, to be with Jesus, you're going to have to separate from one reality to become something of a new reality. This is what we call being a new creature in Christ. What's inside of Jesus is a separation from your allegiance, your vows, your commitment, your obligation to the flesh. The flesh itself, being inside the knowledge or the wisdom of the flesh. To say, like, for example, of what that knowledge consists of, you're naked. Let's say, for example, a person says, I'm gonna go in my house so I can get away from all this trouble that's in the neighborhood. But your house is inside the trouble. No, I'm away from the trouble. No, that's inside of you. You're away from the trouble. And your house is inside the neighborhood. But see, that's what physicality or wisdom of when Adam and Eve ate of that tree and they made themselves wise, they became knowledgeable about what they see. So they're inside of a octagon of themselves where they only could see or the octagon has 6 points, I believe. So forgive me if it does. If it had more than that, forgive me. But you only can see from these perspective of points. You can't go past the barrier of this. This is why a person will be stuck with saying the world is a sphere, it's a circle, it's a ball. No, it's not. It's flat. It's a layer. You can't see it. You can't grasp the conception of it because you're living in your conscious level is based upon limitations. You can't see past what you see. So that's the whole point of it. And the thought of you seeing past what you see terrifies you, because that terror is to keep you. It's like a whip, like a fear self with a whip to pop you back into that octagon or that octagon that you get back in there only to see those points. You can't get outside of that bubble. It's there to pop you back into that place. So, with that being said, Jesus being his love package, he wants to infuse life, or he wants to reconnect us first of all by hearing the death, the burial, and the resurrection. Those three words, the death, burial, and the resurrection. That drops a seed that inside those three words, death, burial, and resurrection, if they were to be said simultaneously, and they were said as like one unit, they will drop a seed of faith inside your soul. That seed of faith, what all the components of your soul, mind, will, emotion, intellect, and imagination, has been looking for this. It's been wandering in the world for this, but it only comes through Jesus. It's the seed that's going to liberate them, because that seed is going to go, it's going to trickle down to the spirit. This would allow, in other words, this would create an umbilical cord to connect us back to the Father. Faith. Faith is our way out, but not faith in something that's hopeless or something that's dead, but something that's omnipresent, something that's omniscient, something that's self-sustaining, something that's self-evolving, something that never dies, something that's life itself, something that's love. So the faith itself connects us to the love, or to love. And love is able to do what? To pour into us or transfer love nutrients into us to raise our spirit from the dead. Now that goes to the heartbeat, which is the soul. Now our soul is now the love or the life that's inside the spirit goes into the soul in all the areas that it does not know God. Of the areas of the mind, areas of the will, areas of the emotion, areas of the imagination, areas of the intellect. All those areas is going to be perfected in God's love if we will walk by the laws of love. This is what the package of Jesus did. So if the person were to say the death, burial, and resurrection, if they were to hear the death, burial, and resurrection, understand within that, they're hearing that as a combination is a seed of faith. That seed of faith wants to start a new life inside of you and raise your old life from the new life is to raise your old life from the dead. In other words, go from serving, toiling, turmoil, torment, and being a prison or being in prison of your own self. In other words, it's like going on a vacation, but you can't enjoy anything because you're bombarded by so many problems in your mind. But that's the whole purpose of going on the vacation, is to get away from that, right? But if you're not allowed to enjoy yourself, it's not much of a vacation. So this is what the seed of faith wants to do inside of us. It wants to go inside of us and actually bring us from the dead so we can actually enjoy the abundance of life, not enjoy the life of torment, turmoil, toiling, torment. In other words, to labor of death, labor and fear. God, the Father, love itself is supposed to be our provider, but love itself can't be our provider if we're not his children. We have to become his children. We have to be reborn as his children. That means his son, which is the love package, the death, burial, and the resurrection. Why is the son holds the package? Because what he was willing to do to get us to reconnect us back to love. He was willing to die for us. Now, a person said, like, I don't know about that. See, that's disbelief. Because you can't go past what you see. To grasp what's being said, you have to go past what you see, which will be what? The seed of faith. So at some point, the death, burial, and resurrection would have placed a spirit, would have placed a seed inside your soul to connect to. Otherwise, you have another spirit or another seed inside your soul that you're feeding off of, that we would call that seed is of disbelief. And it won't allow you to see past what you see. You can't see that God, which is a spirit, will package a spirit just so our spirit can be alive again. You can't see that. You would say, like, why would a father give away his son? Because he loves you. See, disbelief won't allow you to connect yourself to love. You can't grasp the concept of love. Love itself is so beautiful that anyone that connects to it don't want to separate from it. That's why you can't help but to serve. That's why when the spirit of love will give you an assignment to go ahead to love your neighbor, or to love the one that your enemies, or love the one that despitefully just dragged you out, and it will tell you forgive them or bless them. It won't be a hard deal to do. Or when it's time to go to that job that you once upon a time you dread, you're ecstatic about going because you're carrying a love package. That it's not that you're going to go work, you're on assignment, that the love of God can come out of you and transform that environment for good. We don't get infused with God's love so we can sit on the couch and we can just absorb God all to ourselves. We on assignment. And this is where I missed the mark. This is where I've fallen short. This is my confession. This is where I got comfortable. And this, well, God will walk past you and use somebody else. He will. I don't want God to do that with me. So I'm asking God now, what's my next assignment? What's my next assignment? And fear itself, or me having a grip of moving forward in faith, which will be a grip on fear, the goal of it is to extract me from going towards love. Because if love gets the opportunity to perfect me, or if love is allowed to have her perfect work inside of me or be perfected inside of me, it will kick out all the torment, and I will have the peace that I've never known in this earth, in this body. Now I'm a testament of love. Now I'm a witness of love. Now I got something to give versus saying like, God, won't you bless? No, look at me. Have you ever seen me sick? You find me a person that surrendered upon a submission of love to be sick. It's impossible. You find me a person that surrendered upon the submission of love itself and is walking the obedience to love. Let's say it that way. You won't find a person that's without. That person, you will never find them without. If they're up under the submission, up under the obedience to love, they can never be without, because love itself would lead them to where love is. So wherever that they go, so like for example, if that, going back to the example of the person in a convenience store, if they were to drop some money out of their pocket, and the person ahead of you and is in line were to drop some money, and you see them, you would, excuse me, ma'am or sir, whatever, you drop something, and you're not looking like, man, oh, what about me? How I'm going to? No, you don't have to worry about that. When love is inside of you, that's a concern when death is inside of you. That's why, if you notice, only the deaf can beg, right? Only death can beg because it's without life. It's begging for life. It has no connection to life. It has no umbilical cord or whatever to connect to life. It has no way to it. Death itself is death. This is what Lucifer became. When Lucifer was in, it's my belief that Lucifer was the bright morning star, right? And his job was to bring forth the praise and the glory of God, because he was the truth bearer. What I mean by that is, within him, he had the array of a presence that would allow all God's creation to magnify the Lord. Where it's almost like he was a symphony. Whatever that he would just, I don't know, whatever we would do. If you're talking about he stand, whatever, inside of him, he had like the glory of God, like the truth of God, and everything would just see God's presence. It would see God's splendor. It would see how good God is, everything. But according to the book of Isaiah, God saw something that was inside of him that was considered wrong. And he saw in him that Lucifer wanted to become a god in his own eyes. In other words, he wanted to become like the Most High. He wanted to become the Most High. He wanted to be praised versus being the one to bring in the praise of God. And it's my belief that's the reason why, if you go in Genesis, why the world was out darkness, why the world was darkness, because I believe Lucifer's job was to bring in the presence of God. Now, I have nothing really for that. So if anybody listens to this aspect of the message, go to the Holy Spirit and ask God about this. And if you get anything about this in Scripture, relate it back to me. So I believe that, it's that the earth was without form and void because it had no light. And the light, I believe, that was inside the son of the morning star that was in Lucifer. By Lucifer, that by him wanting to be like the Most High, he set that iniquity that was in him, which is the iniquity, that is separation itself. This is done at the very beginning. This is not done like right before Adam is about to be born. This is the very beginning of existence. So when God was like creating everything, the cherubs, the archangels, the cherubims, and everything, when everything was being created, it was there then. It was there when he was created. He saw himself. Lucifer saw himself. He saw himself. And I guess, when he saw himself, not as what we would come to know of seeing ourselves, like looking at a reflection in a mirror, it is when you, okay, let's say, like, for example, we all have parents. Regardless if they taught us right or wrong, or they led us to do something of right or wrong, we have a split decision to do what they ask us to do. If they were to say, son or daughter, or son, the father, or whatever, they say, go take out the trash. All right. That's separation right there. Even if you go take out the trash, you're separated. Because where's the love at? Now, Lucifer's situation may be a little different from ours because he is sin itself, right? He is separation itself. He is death itself. When our situation was in our atmosphere of our homes, or if it was, particularly if it was a broken home, was infused by what he did, what he infused into Adam and Eve, and it came down to us. So if a household that doesn't know Christ or the love of God through Christ, then therefore they're going to be up under that self same thing. And when they see something, they're going to see it from their perspective of being right. So if their parent were to say, go take out the trash, they could say, I don't understand why you asking me to do it when you could have asked me 3 hours ago. The parent could say, like, how come you're not walking in love? Did I say something that was actually to go up against love? No, it was something to go up against how you feel. But how you feel was based upon some information that was telling you how to be a God in your own eyes. In other words, not to submit to an authority. So if you have Lucifer in the beginning saying, like, I want to be like the Most High God, I want to sit my seat among the throne of the congregation, I want to be across the face of the deep, I want to do all these different things, right? In other words, he wanted to be exalted. He's separated from God. The fact that he said that was found in the midst of him. No, somebody can say, well, how far can you? It doesn't matter. We all started from the same level that Lucifer started on with our parents. All right. Our parents tells us, go take out the trash. We're in the exact same level what Adam was with God. We're in the exact same level what Lucifer was with God. Exact same level. Now, us, on the other hand, we may not know God because they was once without sin. Lucifer was at one place, he was created by God, and he was one with him. And then there was one point that Adam was once one with him. Us, on the other hand, this is why God is so merciful unto us, because we wasn't always connected to God. We were in this position of disobedience, where we thought disobedience was the right thing to do. We call that the lust of the flesh. Following the lust of the flesh, or how we feel and so forth. In other words, listen to the lust of the flesh affected our emotions, how to express those inhibitions and so forth. And we follow that as our blueprint, our template, and that became the way of survival. So, right? So that's the difference between us and them. This is why God will give us a clean slate in his son. Which goes back to the point of why Jesus died. He died for the cost of sin, not for the sin over what Lucifer did, but the sin for what we did, because we are actually infected by something that we was never known that we had. Now, particularly if you grew up in a household that never knew Jesus, the love of God through Jesus. Let's say it that way, because some people don't want to acknowledge Jesus because that's fear itself. Because you can't, people can't embrace something they can't see. So they got to categorize him. That's fear itself. When you got categories, that's divisions. That's separation. That's death itself. So first we'll say like, well, you are a yellow man and you are a purple man. That's division. Why you got to label them? Why can't they just be? Well, because we got to know the separation. So now you're going to base it upon the outskirts of what it looks like. So they're purple, so they should be over here with the purple people, or they should be given this measure because they're purple. No, I mean, when the Father looks at us, he sees if he looks to see if we are his children. His children is based upon the love of him. Are we in a position to receive his love? We will say ultimately, yeah, I want to receive your love, but are you in a position to receive his love? To be in a position is that you have to be receptive. You have to be one of the same of it. It's a nature of it. In other words, for me to receive something from something, I have to be familiar with it. Otherwise, I'm going to be suspicious of it. I'm going to be very subjective of it. I'm going to be very distant and very like I want to call it being vague, but I'm going to be very like not cohesive. I don't know if that's a word, but I don't know. I'm not going to be conceivable. I tell you that. I'm not going to. It's not going to compute with me. It's not going to register. I'm going to be very like, what's up with this? I don't know you. Why are you offering this to me? Right. So how can you really receive love when love hasn't when you're not in the atmosphere? You don't know what the atmosphere of love is. Our demonstration of love is conditional. But the love that we're talking about here that's going to restore the emotion area is the love that is unconditional. It has no limitations. It has one assignment, and that's to set you free from everything that's restricting you from having peace, joy in your life. That's restricted from any area that's broken, that you was without, that you was abandoned. It doesn't mean things per se. The spirit of love goes past what you see. Some people say, well, God don't love me because he didn't give me what I wanted. But what you're asking for is you're asking for something from God. You're asking God to give you something that's evil when he's good. You're asking God to give you something that's temporal, which is evil. It's going to die. It's going to fade. It's going to vanish. It's not eternal. But if you were to ask God for something of who he is, you think he would stop you from having it? No. He wants you to have it because he's in love with you. That's to show evidence that he loved you. So going back to the love package, Jesus is his love package because of the fact that he holds the spirit of love. He's the only one created of God. Spirit to spirit creation. And he dwelt in the flesh. He could have came down as an angel, but he didn't. He came down in flesh for two reasons. So it's one of the same. So he can go through what we have to go through. In other words, he wasn't, how can I say it? He took off the let's say the crown of being the right hand of God or being at the right hand of God. He took off that crown and he became just like us. In other words, to walk out everything. Why? Because the debt of sin had to be paid by mortal flesh, by flesh and blood. This is why they would sacrifice animals for the blood sanctification and so forth of sin. But for the sin of death itself to be paid, it has to be paid of the same nature. The same nature that caused it has to be the same nature to resolve it. An angel can't pay that debt. Silver and gold can't pay that debt. Only whatever caused it has to be the resolve of it. So the spirit of love entered to a body and it dwelt among us. And so therefore it was on one mission. It wasn't there on a mission to get a house. And once again, the spirit of love goes past what you see. So it's by us being entrapped by what we see, the physical walls of the flesh, the knowledge of the flesh, we're entrapped into that. So that's as far as we can see. So that's why we need things to make us look like we're royalty, or things to make us look like we're happy, or things to make us to seem as though there's something that we're not. Because the true essence of the source of joy and everything else comes from within, not on something that's on the outside. So if a person needs to get the money to buy things to make them look a certain way, well, they are void in their soul. If the person needs the money to go get the car to make them look like therefore they're rich, whatever, they're if a person needs to voice or to voice their opinion to make themselves superior to other, they are void in their soul. They are love deprived, right? So love comes for that reason. So Jesus had to come in this package deal. This is why the seed of faith is inside of the death, the burial, and the resurrection. The seed of faith is inside of that. If a person can hear the death, the burial, and the resurrection, just those three words, death, burial, and resurrection, simultaneously connected as a connection, they will see the seed of faith manifest inside of them. And that seed of faith wants to go inside their soul, which is the heartbeat of the spirit. Because that's going to project what's inside what? The life. I mean, forgive me, this what's inside the soul. It's going to produce what's inside the soul. That's where the person will confess it. So Jesus is inside this love package. And we want the mission of us getting out, the mission of us laboring or toiling all the days of our life is to get back into the fellowship with God. It's a punishment. God is not punishing us. God is trying to get us away from the punishment. That's the punishment that was due to any person that can't accept his son as his love package. He died because he was willing to die for us because there's no greater love than someone to die for you. There's no greater love. No matter what the person buy you, they wouldn't lay down their life for you. That's it, right? They love you. So now to make it more efficient, he was buried. Like we all know, when the body is dead, you bury it. But to transfer from something that was dead to something that's life or that's alive, that's goes beyond what you physically can know. So in other words, it will really have to believe that something was dead and that died on the cross, that it was buried and that it rose again and that it's still alive. You will have to be something of new to grasp that concept. Because the wisdom that you come to know that's keeping you trapped inside the physical realm or the physical reality, it won't allow you to go past what you see. So the seed of something that's unseen, the seed of something that's unseen has to be deposited inside your soul. So you can see the manifestation of something that wasn't to be something that it can be. That's why Abraham was considered the father of faith, because he had an impossible situation based upon he was trapped behind the physical walls of limitation. He was old at 100-something years old. His body was past the point of reproduction and his wife was barren. Then God himself tells him, you're going to have a child. Not just a child, you're going to be a father of many nations. But he's saying to this boy, it's like out of thin air, like, how can I have a child? And look at me, I'm old. I can't produce based upon what was done before me. All the way up to this point, there's a limit. There's a knowledge, right? There's a knowledge. There's a wisdom. There's an understanding that the physical comprehension can grasp, can conceive, that it holds on to as its support of direction. So he's going by the template of what he saw prior to him, what man was able to do. But the limitation of what he saw was based upon the effects of death. That's the whole point of God. God is alive. So what he was saying to Abram, I'm about to bring your dead body to life. Can you believe me for that? At first, no. But it got to the point where he was able to. When he got to that point, we was able to believe past what he saw. He produced a promised seed. Before that, him and his wife thought God meant it another way, because they're going by the limitations of the entrapment behind the octagon of the flesh. You're only going to see those. Does the octagon have 6 points? Well, you're going to go see those six perspectives, how to see it. You can't see it past that. You're going to see it. Maybe the octagon has 8 points. Am I talking about hexagon? Hexagon? I don't know. Anyway, all right. You're only going to see it past 6 points. You're not going to be able to see it past the 6 points of existence. So God had to get Abram to get past what he saw to see something more. That's the same self thing what God is trying to do through the spirit of his son. He's trying to go the spirit of his son on God is walking the earth. He has always been. And he's walking the earth looking for vessels that he can walk through. Why? Because mankind, such as myself, I'm not gonna go as far as what I see. So I need a template. I need an example of it. Right. So I would need someone that I trust or someone I know to show me a demonstration of that. Unless it's appointed for me to be that demonstration. And you better guarantee, I'm willing to guarantee you this, that you're going to fight against what you see. I mean, you're going to fight against what you hear based upon what you see. This is what we would call the call. This is what Jonah had to go through. This is what a lot of other great patriots or the great, we would call the prophets, whether they be minor or major prophets, regardless of what their assignment was, they went through a struggle by going up against what they see based upon what they don't see. So you could be that individual that God's walking the earth to see if in other words, God is looking for vessels that will have set themselves away from being hurt, harm, and danger. Regardless of their atmosphere, it said like they was in a toxic environment, that their atmosphere was of hurt, harm, of endangerment. It was up under corrupt communication. It was up under as far as like how to not obey the laws of love. It was up under all that. In the midst of that, God is still talking to every person. This is the proof of that is through the resurrection of Jesus. To show proof that the resurrection of Jesus is alive, when God is able to talk to you and give you something to do, or something to say that's in the obedience to love, but that's in the opposition of what you've formerly known. So for this case, say like for example, going back to the example we said prior about the being in line in a convenience store and someone that's ahead of you drops some money. It's situations like that. God is walking up and down the earth, seeing who he can talk to. So you hear on one perspective, that's your money. Pick it up, put it in your pocket. Don't tell that person. Just step on it, put it in your pocket. Or you can be that other perspective and say, excuse me, ma'am or sir, you dropped something. Doing what's right is not doing what's right in the knowledge or the wisdom of the comprehension of an individual, but is in the law of love. Righteousness is inside the law of love. It will cost you what you want. It will cost you the desires or the lust of the flesh. It will cost you that. It will cost you the resistance of fear. That's the price of love. Is separating from fear, because the fear itself is trying to, if it can get you to grab it, it will lead you in your grip on it. It will lead you towards death itself. In other words, which is the misfulfillment or the unfulfillment of God's perfect will for your life. You was never meant to toil. You was never meant to be in turmoil. You was never meant to be in torment. You was never meant for anything. God made you in his image and likeness, but until you're not in that rightful place as that, until you are reconnected back with him. Accepting Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, in other words, that individual, they believe in the death, burial, and resurrection, right? They receive that in their heart, that is true. So much so that the Father infused himself inside of them with his spirit. Now the spirit becomes born again, and now they can see it in like in the law of love, right? They could submit themselves. They can see love at its purest point, where they want to submit up under it. Like, I want nothing else to rule over my life. I don't want to answer to anything else but doing what love will request and require of me. So they will find themselves walking whatever they're doing, but it will demonstrate love. Now this becomes the love walk. Why? Because it's the walk of faith, and it's coming at the expense. It's coming at the extent and at the expense of shedding and shredding things that the Father didn't plant inside of you. Now, how many years you been on the existence of this earth before you got introduced to Christ, and let alone inviting Christ in to start walking the walk of faith, can determine like how much of corruption of seducing spirits or incorruption of wicked thoughts or wicked imaginations or unclean spirits and so forth that we could have invited in. So the Father wants to go inside of the soul by our consent, our permission, to clean out everything. Clean out everything is allowing love to start in our spirit to raise it from the dead, and it goes up to our goes to our soul, and then our soul is getting transformed by of course we're talking about the renewing of the mind. The renewing of the mind is basically becoming to being born again, which is of no longer of flesh and death, but is no longer is this life of the spirit, which is love, right? So now we become ambassadors or citizens for Christ. And now where we go, we plant the seed of what? Love. So instead of us going to looking for the atmosphere to go where love is, we become the atmosphere of love. And this is where I missed the mark. I was still searching for an atmosphere for to refuel myself for love, because I was like, okay, the scripture says love has when love is perfected, it will cast out fear. So okay, I need to be around the atmosphere where love is. But now what if there's no atmosphere around me where love is at? What do? This is the perfect opportunity for the Father to introduce himself to you in such a way that you will know that he's God, but at the same time infuse you with this perfected love where you're reborn, rejuvenated. You're getting everything that you thought you had to get on the outside, but the Father himself can revive you in the spirit on the inside. So you no longer have to dress it up to make you look like you're good or make it like you're royalty. You become royalty because you get born again. You become a new creation. This is the whole conversation that God had with Nicodemus about becoming born again. You know, you have to be born again of the spirit, not of the flesh. So you can't make yourself look good. You can't make yourself, that's deception itself. That's a person that's inside the six walls of fear. They would try to dress it up to make them look like something that they're not. That's where you're or I guess I could say not six walls but five walls. What is the object or the that has five corner points? Is that a hectagon? Whatever that it is. We had 5 points. You're talking about your sight, your hearing, your smelling, your tasting, and your ability to touch. You got to get out. Being transformed into a new creation in the spirit takes you away from relying on those five corners. I said six prior. Forgive me. I meant five. So those five corner points. You are entrapped in finding those five corner points. In other words, those are the things that you go by where you trust. You trust what you see. You trust what you smell. You trust what you hear. You trust what you taste. And you trust what you touch, right? That's what you trust. That's what you go by for your sense of security. That is your protection. That's what we would call our intuition and so forth. That's our provision per se, how to survive in this world. But when you become a new creation in Christ, you're no longer in this world. Those are ways to survive in the web of fear because you're inside a perception of fear itself. That's what Adam and Eve were when they disobeyed God. They fell to this degree. They fell to a degree where they're inside the walls of the five walls of fear. Now, to hear God will have to come inside the four walls of fear, but you will have to you will have to be in a position to allow something from the outside to come in. So that's where it becomes the battle, because this is what the faith walk is about. It's like it's going past what you see. For up to that point, what you've known is based upon what you saw. That's all. That's why people hold on to facts. If you can't show them physical evidence of proof, it doesn't exist. It's not real. But that's where they would consider that the truth. But the facts are not truth. Facts are limited. Truth is true. It can show you inside and out. That's why it said we're not ready for the truth. because you have to go past what you physically see to see the truth. With that being said, my people of faith, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And if anybody want to receive him, it's a simple act of this. We were just talking about the death, burial, and the resurrection, right? Now, you personally want to know why he died for you. So you can ask him, Jesus, why did you die for me? Why did you personally, Father or God, why did you give forth your son to die for me? See, people look at Jesus as a physical being. They want to label him as this complexion, this ethnic group. Go past all that. God is a spirit. Elohim, the Most High God, is a spirit. And they that worship him in spirit and in truth, right? So if he's a spirit, he sent forth a spirit to the world. People were looking for a body. That's why they can never find Jesus. He's a spirit. Inside of you is the kingdom of heaven. That the spirit that God himself sent to the earth, which is his son, birthed into the world by destroying the flesh suit. If that flesh suit is not crucified, the spirit of God doesn't come back to man. So we can see the Father face to face. See how that works? So here, this is the opportunity where you can ask Jesus to show himself in spirit and in truth, so you can see him as Savior and Lord. Jesus, I want to know why you died for me. If you already know that, there's no need for you to ask him that. Now you're tempting him with evil. But if you've never known that, you want to know. I mean, you're asking that question because you are vacant, or you are void of love. That's the intent of that question. It's to fulfill that area of vacancy. It's to fill that area where you're deprived of love. You want to know what God, why you sent for your son for me? And once he show you and tell you, you will never be the same. My people of faith, you are the blessed. Let's be the blessing. Let's keep walking.